Hello everyone, this is Venom Geek Media here, and today we're going to be continuing our Doctrine and Organization series, and today we are looking at the Federation. Now, this is going to be a bit of an interesting one because it might surprise you to know that I actually have not thought much about Federation doctrine compared to a lot of the other species. I have kind of come up with an idea, and it's one that really leaves a lot of freedom because there is a lot of variation in what we see. There isn't this kind of rigid structure as that there is with so many of the other species. So let's get right into it. So of course, Federation is a multifaceted, multicultural organization with many different species, with many different military heritages. You have to leave room for that creativity and that individuality, and that leads to something that Starfleet terms sandbox doctrine. Now, the idea of sandbox doctrine is essentially to create a basic structure, a basic operational and tactical structure on which a fleet can operate, but which leaves room for the individual character of the different species that form the Federation. And this is something that actually has been shown to be a bit of an advantage, because particularly in the 4 Years' War, one of the problems the Klingons keep coming up against, ships are generally either Andorian, human, or Vulcan, or Tellarite. They're very separated still. That decreases as the 23rd century progresses, but certainly at that point, during the early Federation, everyone's got their own ships. But the Klingons don't know that, so they're struggling to tell who's who. They will never face the same reaction twice, and they will never get there's never a predictable method that they can use, a reliable, consistent method, because different races react differently to the tactics. And so they want to kind of preserve that level of individuality and distinction and diversity. That's the basic ideas. So how's that incorporated on a unit organization level? So the first real organization, it's somewhat informal, but that is the idea of Wingmen. And that is simply 2 ships that will be paired together. Now, generally, it's 2 ships that will have a long operational history together. The crews know each other quite well and have a good trust and working relationship with each other. And they will most likely be of the same class. And they will have gone off on missions together prior to the war. And that is really an informal one and designed for kind of just basic, very basic tactics. And there's no real senior in that. There's no one really leading the Wingmen. It is just 2 ships communicating and cooperating with each other. And that is the other thing, is that the command structure is collaborative. And this is something you will see expressed. The commander is more there to kind of be an ideas guy rather than be a micromanager. And he's also there to kind of communicate and back to the fleet, but he's, encouraged to employ the ingenuity and initiative of those under him, and that goes all the way through. So that brings us to the primary unit, which is the Squadron, and that is 4 of the same class. They're also generally homogenized between species, so generally it will be 4 classes with majority crews of a single species, or the majority of a same tradition. So, you can have some multi-species ships, and they'll be put together, but if you've got, say, a group of mostly Andorian or completely Andorian ships, they'll be put in a squadron together. And that is led by a Commodore, not an Admiral, unless it is a special assignment, but they are led by a Commodore. Now, this brings us to the next unit, which is really the most equivalent to the Klingon wing, is the Federation wing, which is a little bit smaller. It's 8 ships, so that's 2 squadrons put together, and they will most of the time be 2 different ship classes. Again, they will still be an attempt to homogenize between species. There will be an attempt to get a shared tradition working, but that is the highest it will go. The wing can vary a lot in its composition, but is optimized towards specific tasks. So they'll still share some similar traits. So you won't have a Galaxy class and a Defiant class squadron put together in a wing. You will have a Centaur and a Sabre put together in a wing. that kind of thing. You will have some similar classes. They are specialized units, is a wing. 2 juniors under the Admiral, who is, again, really more there to operate as part of the next highest unit, which is that of the battle group, which corresponds to a Klingon brigade, roughly. It's about 32 ships, 4 wings. Now, it can vary in size. Now, there is much more specialization in a Starfleet battle group. So you will group your light cruisers together, your various light cruiser or light formations, so light cruisers, attack wings, and frigates, all together in a light battle group, so that it can carry out specialist tasks. Now, they are also designed to be, and this is part of why you have this class variation and this unit variation, is they will be also expected to be an independent fighting unit, an independent maneuver unit, much like the Klingons. But as you say, it's a little bit smaller, so you have 4 wings, by no means unmanageable. And again, he's more there to foster the cooperation and collaboration between the admirals under him, who will be doing the majority of the fighting and leading the tactics and taking the initiative in the actual engagement. He's just there to keep them organized. And as I say, it can really vary a lot, and that really allows them to embrace particular tactics for that group. It's also different from a Cardassian division, which again is very specialized, but the idea of a Cardassian division is not that it will go off and be an independent unit of maneuver, whereas it is with the Federation battle group. It is the vice admirals who are, taking the lead, rather than the overall fleet commander who is maneuvering them. So you will see significant variation. So in a battle group, you might have a vice admiral will choose his battle group. Maybe he wants something that's a bit more aggressive, but he wants to keep it balanced. So he won't just have Andorian formations. He'll also put in some Vulcans and, or maybe some human ships as well. And that will help kind of manage the weaknesses. That helps balance out the strengths and weaknesses of the different species and the different traditions and tactics. Because you don't want too much cohesion in that unit. Because if there is too much cohesion, then they can break. They can be demoralized very easily if they realize, oh wait, that's our game plan that's also gone down the drain. You want cohesion, but you don't want too much cohesion. You want to sandwich different units together so that one isn't particularly affected if the other breaks or has a bad go of it. So that leads us to the fleet, which is 3 to 4 battle groups, around about 100 ships, and that is led by a full admiral, and that is the primary strategic and maneuver unit. It's very simple. It's the one that is on the map, and that is moved as a unified fleet. Again, as you can see, there would be actually a lot of variation in the character of different fleets, but it is the primary strategic unit. Now, above that, you do have the fleet group, which would be led by the fleet admirals. They are more regionally based and more nebulous as kind of areas of operation rather than specific units. And those are, really tied to which front you're fighting on. Now, that really just brings me down to units. And essentially, the units can be kind of governed at the wing level. And you can put various wing types together to form various types of specialist battle group as to whatever your needs are. So we'll just go through them. They have different roles and compositions. They have numerous different ships that can fill in. Wings are more archetypes to be filled in, and you'll have different variations. You'll have elite versions, which will have generally the newer ships, the anti-Borg ships, will be the elite versions of any given wing. The first one is the attack wing. Now, Federation doesn't actually have many attack ships, so this actually extends up to the destroyers, but will generally be Defiance, Sabres, and Mirandas. And, is there to, lead the charge, fight other attack ships, get round the enemy flanks, do a lot of the skirmishing. That's really the job of the attack wing. Next up from that, you have the light wing. Now, this is nebulous, and you can have a lot of variation with it in the light wings, but these are generally your light cruisers. And this will include things like the Centaur and other kind of lightened variants. Cheyennes, as well would also fit into that, but is where you will have your lightened versions of any given ship class. These are more closer to capital ship size. That then brings us to the pursuit wing. In pursuit wings, you'll generally see various 4-nacelled ships, and that is very deliberately so that you can have it's in the name, it's pursuit. They are to lead the vanguard, lead the charge, pursue the enemy, or go out and do reconnaissance. So they have to be relatively strong, but obviously the main thing is that they are fast and they have endurance. So that's where you'll see most of the quad nacelle ships appear, is in pursuit wings. Next up from that, you will have the frigate wings, and this includes a huge variety of ships. Again, that forward vanguard that will go out ahead of the fleet and do a lot of the initial skirmishing that might lead up to an engagement. And that will include things like the New Orleans, Intrepid, the Norway, the Steamrunner. They're really the smallest of the kind of primary combat ships. They're the smallest ships of the line, but they'll adopt more flanking and specialist duties when it comes to an actual battle. They'll be held back from the battle lines where they, won't really stand up to the attritional warfare that can happen, and instead they'll be there to be maneuverable and to be ready to carry out a big charge or breakthrough to exploit that gap. And that then leads us to the support wing. It can vary, so Akira's and Norway's would be a support wing, but the more common one is Freedom's and Springfield's. They have their torpedoes and lance phasers. They are there to saturate the enemy line with long-range firepower. Similarly, as a supporting unit, you have the carrier wing. This generally will consist of Curries and Constellations. They're older ships, they're not really up to fighting, but they can carry fighter complements into action. They're by no means the only ones. Akira's can definitely do it. These are the ones that you would most generally see in that role. And that really takes us up to the cruiser wing, which is the primary unit in the line of battle. And this goes pretty much all the way through. Will include most medium and heavy cruisers. So everything, including Excelsior, Ambassadors, the derivations of Ambassadors, Andromedas, Niagaras, Challengers, all the big Starfleet cruisers find their way into the cruiser wing. That is the primary unit for the ships of the line. They are the ships of the line. They are there in the front lines of the battle, going at it, and they are the primary fighting force in a general engagement. Now, the most elite part is the Galaxy Wing, and that needs no introduction, of course. That's 4 galaxies and generally paired with 4 nebulas, the shock unit that is going to get in there and make the difference and make the breakthrough. And there's very little that can, once a Galaxy Wing gets going, once it gets some momentum and some oomph behind it, some wallop behind it, it's very difficult to stop. It is a very potent unit. Now, they're kept back in the line, sort of as a reserve, and once the cruisers and the other various units have opened the gap, the Galaxy just punches through and just does incredible amounts of damage. So that's really, but like I say, there's other ships that I haven't mentioned, but you can see how they would all fit in. Like I say, this is an open sandbox that is designed to incorporate a lot of variation and diversity into it, and allow a lot of individual tactics, expressions, and traditions to be manifested, but also work as part of a collaborative, shared command structure. That is really how a Federation fleet operates. Once again, I'll thank all my members, especially Tony Tallarico, who has joined at the Commander tier, and so will now be able to request video topics. So if you'd like to do that, then join at the Commander tier. Alternatively, if you'd be interested in some of the various artwork that I now create for a lot of my videos, then join at the Centurion tier. See you next time.